Hello and welcome to today's program where we are going to discuss the subject of changing people's outlook on disability, and in particular to the money spent, the finances spent by people with disability. Before we start today, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we need you. We need you to help us get those numbers up so we can continue to grow and build more content for you. Also today we are sponsored by Simple Solutions in Hervey Bay, Hello World Travel in Hervey Bay, and we give our thanks to the NDIS who, through my NDIS funding, are helping this cause move along as quickly as we can. Excuse me. Okay, let's talk about today's program, which is changing people's mindset on disability, and in particular the money that they bring into, or the finance that they bring in to the community. Now, in the UK, they have branded the disability dollar the purple dollar. Don't ask me why, but they have. There you go. Got a nice purple dollar there. I don't know why they made it purple, but they didn't. We're going to run with that. And they're doing that in order to show people that the finances spent by people with disabilities are significant. And in fact, in the last 6 months, they had a shopping day for the purple dollar where people took notice of what was happening, and they kept records, and they said the amount spent by people with disabilities was much more sizable than what they thought. So let's just talk about the money that's brought in. Now, we don't have a way to gauge it very well, but there is one instance where the government has kept some figures that really do show how money comes into the community through disabilities, and that in Australia is the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is fairly new. And there's some numbers that have been brought up on that by the government which show how much money is being brought in. So let's have a look at just one area in Melbourne, Frankston, okay, which is a tiny little suburb in Melbourne. And you think, well, how much money could people with disabilities bring into one suburb? Now remember, here we are only talking about services provided by the NDIS for people on the NDIS. There are many, many people with disabilities and elderly people with mobility impairment and all sorts of people that aren't on the NDIS. In fact, the majority are not on the NDIS. But let's take a look at how much money the NDIS brings in to just that one small area of Melbourne. Now, excuse me, got a little bit of a tickle in the throat today. I can promise you it's not COVID, it's just a tickle. Let's have a look at the figures. The current figures they have are from July 2018 to June 2019. And in that one area of Melbourne, that one suburb, the NDIS services brought in a dollar figure of $22,440,000 just for that 12 months. And if you look at the forecast, they have a forecast for just a couple of years away in 2023, and because more people are getting onto the NDIS, excuse me again, and the figure goes up to $58,127,900. So that's quite a sizable amount of money. If we look at, I'm up here in Queensland in a place called Hervey Bay, so you would think, well, probably not much money would come into a place like Hervey Bay. I'm just putting in the postcode to have a look at the figures. And I'm going to those figures again for July 2018 to June 2019. And in the Hervey Bay area, it brought in $32,350,000. And the forecast for 2023 is $68,855,000. That's a lot of money just in NDIS services. And NDIS services include support in shared accommodation, personal care, assistance with community activities, all sorts of things, physiotherapy, aids, wheelchairs, all sorts of things. But that's a lot of money for just those couple of small areas. But it does give you a gauge of what the disability dollar can bring to a community. And this is what people do not realise when they look at disability as a liability. And there is a little bit of a change going on. In June 2017, there was a travel article. I think I'm not going in the wrong spot for Carl, and that was in the Travel Bulletin of Australia. June 2017, Accessibility Travel, they did an article on the potential of disability travel in Australia, and I'm going to read off my screen to tell you what they said. Much of the tourism industry regards accessibility as a cost, not an asset. With an estimated of 20% of Australian population living with some form of disability, experts believe the market is a potentially lucrative one. The most recent data, and this is not really very recent, were taken from figures compiled in 2003, and they found 11% of people who took overnight just domestic trips identified themselves as having some form of disability, generating $4.8 billion for the economy. Yet, if the domestic industry got its act together, it could share in $8.7 billion bonanza. The potential is only expected to increase as the population increases and the age population increases and the consumer empowering National Disability Insurance Scheme rolls out nationally. Now, we'll talk about that in a minute, but just to give you some figures from America, USA in 2002, when they talked about how much money people spent on travel, and this was basically domestically in the US because people don't travel internationally a lot with disabilities unless they have confidence, and that's why we need to change the mindset. So there are more disabled rooms or more accessible rooms, more accessible venues and so on. If you would like to imagine how much just Americans spent on domestic travel in 2002, it was $13.6 billion, and that was in 2002. Now, a lot of those people want to come over to Australia and other parts of the world after the situation that's currently around dissipates and spend their money. And this is why not just travel, but every retail business should start to think of people with disabilities as an asset, not a liability. This perception needs to change. If people start making things accessible, more and more people with disabilities will frequent their businesses and bring their money to them. It is an absolutely false way to think of people with disabilities as a liability. It's just not the way that it actually is. So please keep that in mind as you think or try to rethink your situation regarding the amounts of dollars and that people with disabilities bring into the community, and try and rethink, change the way you think about these things. We'll be following this for quite some time. We'll keep our eye on the figures and all the things that, all the developments with both the NDIS and just disability travel and disability retail, all sorts of things disability. So make sure you keep watching us for that. And if you have any particular insights or anything you want to say or tell us, please drop us an email at admin@accessibleglobe.tv. Don't forget that today we have been proudly sponsored by Simple Solutions here in Hervey Bay, and they're wonderful. They do lots of things on the NDIS and lots of things to make lives of people with disabilities so much better. We're also sponsored by Hello World Travel in Hervey Bay, and they've already been part of sending people from Australia to Thailand in fully accessible travel that was really, really empowering. And right now, because of the COVID situation, working on Australian packages to Cairns, to the Fraser Coast where I am, and eventually down in Melbourne, Sydney and the Northern Territory. So we're going to put a real focus on some domestic travel for those people in Australia, and of course eventually bringing people from all over the world to this wonderful country. We'd also like to thank the NDIS, because through their funding, through me being a participant in the NDIS, as I said, they're freeing up some of the cash that I do have to put into this wonderful project that I'm really enjoying, and we hope you are too. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to us, and we'll see you again soon on Accessible Globe TV. Thank you.